In a quiet, unassuming town in Georgia, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The kind of place where everyone knew each other by name, or at least by face, and gossip traveled faster than the town's one traffic light could turn green. For 17-year-old Jasmine Thompson, this was home. She was an ordinary girl with extraordinary dreams. Bright, hard-working, and full of ambition, Jasmine stood out not just because she excelled in school, but also because of her unwavering determination to succeed despite the challenges she faced daily as a young black woman in a predominantly white community. Jasmine lived with her older brother Marcus, who had always been her biggest supporter. Marcus was a federal prosecutor based in Washington, D.C., but he made it a point to visit home whenever he could. He often reminded Jasmine that no matter how tough things got, she should never let anyone dim her light. "You've got the brains, the heart, and the grit," he'd tell her. "Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." These words stayed with Jasmine, especially on days when the world seemed determined to bring her down. On this particular Saturday afternoon, Jasmine decided to take a break from studying for her upcoming debate tournament. She needed supplies, notebooks, pens, and maybe even a new backpack if she found something affordable. Her mom had handed her some cash earlier that week, and Jasmine figured now was as good a time as any to use it. So, she hopped into her beat-up sedan and drove to the local mall, a place that felt like both a sanctuary and a battleground depending on the day. The mall wasn't particularly fancy. It had a food court with greasy pizza slices, a few clothing stores catering to teenagers, and a modest electronics section, but it served its purpose. Jasmine wandered through the aisles of a popular retail chain, picking up items she needed while keeping an eye on her budget. She paid for her purchases at the register, stuffing the neatly folded receipt into her pocket without giving it much thought. Little did she know this simple trip would spiral into something far more complicated and life-changing. As Jasmine exited the store, she noticed two security guards walking briskly toward her. At first, she thought they might be heading somewhere else, but then one of them called out, "Excuse me, miss, we need to talk to you." Confused, Jasmine stopped and turned around, clutching her shopping bag tightly. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice calm but tinged with concern. One of the guards, a burly man with a clipboard in hand, stepped closer. "Did you happen to pick up a pair of headphones in there?" he asked, pointing back toward the store. Jasmine shook, her head firmly. "No, I didn't," she replied. "I only bought what's in this bag." But the guards weren't satisfied. Without waiting for further explanation, they accused her of stealing a high-end pair of wireless headphones worth several $100s. Jasmine's stomach dropped. "That's ridiculous," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I have my receipt right here." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled piece of paper, holding it up as proof. Unfortunately, the guards weren't interested in listening. One of them grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firmly enough to make her feel trapped, and escorted her to the manager's office. Jasmine protested every step of the way, insisting she hadn't done anything wrong, but her words fell on deaf ears. People passing by stared, some whispering among themselves. A few looked sympathetic, but most simply kept walking, unwilling to get involved. Inside the cramped office, Jasmine sat on a stiff plastic chair while the manager reviewed her receipt. He nodded slowly, confirming that the items in her bag matched the receipt, but instead of apologizing or letting her go, he shrugged and said, "Well, we still need to figure out what happened to those headphones." It was clear they weren't ready to let her off the hook so easily. Things escalated quickly when Judge Harold Peterson arrived. A retired district court official, Judge Peterson occasionally handled minor disputes at the mall, lending his authority to situations like this. When he entered the room, his presence commanded attention. Tall and imposing, with silver hair and a stern expression, he exuded authority, but not fairness. His eyes scanned Jasmine briefly before settling on the guards. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his tone clipped. The manager explained the situation, emphasizing that the expensive headphones were missing and implying that Jasmine was somehow responsible. Judge Peterson barely glanced at the receipt Jasmine held out. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and declared, "Based on the circumstances, I find her guilty of theft." Jasmine froze. Guilty? How could he say that without even hearing her side of the story? Her mind raced as anger and disbelief bubbled inside her. "This isn't fair," she exclaimed, her voice shaking. "I didn't steal anything. You're accusing me just because of how I look." Judge Peterson raised an eyebrow but showed no sign of reconsideration. "Young lady, we've seen this act before," he said dismissively. "People claim innocence all the time, but actions speak louder than words." Those words cut deep. Jasmine felt tears welling up in her eyes, though she fought to keep them at bay. She thought about all the times she'd been judged unfairly, all the sideways glances and whispered comments she'd endured growing up in this town. Was this really happening again? And why did it feel like no one cared enough to listen? Desperate. To prove her innocence, Jasmine remembered something crucial: her brother. Marcus wasn't just family. He was a powerful advocate, someone who wouldn't stand idly by while injustice unfolded. Summoning every ounce of courage, she asked, "Can I please make a phone call?" Judge Peterson hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly agreed, likely assuming she'd call her parents. Little did he know, the person on the other end of the line would change everything. For Jasmine, for him, and for the entire town. As Jasmine dialed Marcus's number, her hands trembled, but her resolve grew stronger. This wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The phone rang twice before Marcus Thompson picked up. On the other end of the line, Jasmine's voice trembled as she tried to explain what had happened. "Marcus," she began, her tone a mix of frustration and fear. "They're accusing me of stealing something I didn't take. They won't listen to me, and this judge, just said I'm guilty without even hearing my side." Her words tumbled out in a rush, each sentence laced with disbelief and anger. Marcus listened intently, his brow furrowing deeper with every detail. Though he was hundreds of miles away in Washington, D.C., his mind immediately shifted into high gear. As a federal prosecutor known for dismantling corruption and holding powerful people accountable, Marcus had seen his fair share of injustice. But this wasn't just another case, it was personal. This was his little sister, the girl he'd raised alongside their mom after their father passed away. The thought of anyone treating her unfairly ignited a fire within him. "Jasmine, stay calm," Marcus said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "Tell me exactly where you are and who's involved. Don't say anything else to them until I get there." His tone was commanding yet reassuring, a reminder that he wasn't just her brother. He was someone who could fight back against the system when it failed. Hanging up the phone, Marcus wasted no time. He grabbed his briefcase, threw on his suit, jacket, and headed straight for his car. Traffic was heavy leaving the city, but Marcus barely noticed. His mind raced with questions. Who was this so-called judge? Why had they dismissed Jasmine's explanation so quickly? And most importantly, how could he make sure this never happened to her? Or anyone else again? Back at the mall, Jasmine sat in the manager's office, gripping her phone like a lifeline. She felt a flicker of hope knowing Marcus was on his way, but the weight of the situation pressed down on her. Judge Peterson had already declared her guilty, and the guards hovered nearby, watching her every move. To them, she was nothing more than a suspect, someone unworthy of trust or respect. Every glance, every muttered comment reinforced the painful reality she'd faced her entire life. People judged her not by her actions but by the color of her skin. Time seemed to crawl. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Jasmine replayed the events in her head. She thought about the receipt tucked safely in her pocket, the same receipt that proved she hadn't stolen anything. Yet no one cared to look closely enough. No one except Marcus, who always believed in her when others didn't. Thinking about him gave her strength even as tears threatened to spill over. Finally, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway outside the office. Jasmine looked up just as the door swung open, revealing Marcus. He strode in confidently, his presence filling the room. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, his tie perfectly knotted, Marcus exuded authority. His tall frame and piercing gaze commanded attention, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. The guards straightened, suddenly uneasy. Even Judge Peterson, seated behind the desk, seemed caught off guard. "Good afternoon," Marcus began, his voice smooth but firm. "I'm Marcus Thompson, federal prosecutor with the Department of Justice." He flashed his credentials, letting the badge catch the light for emphasis. "And this is my sister, Jasmine Thompson, whom you falsely accused of theft." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Judge Peterson cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Mr. Thompson, I assure you we're simply following protocol here," he stammered. "Your sister was seen leaving the store, and valuable items went missing shortly afterward." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Protocol?" he repeated, his tone deceptively calm. "You mean jumping to conclusions based on zero evidence? Because if that's your idea of protocol, then I'd hate to see what passes for justice around here." Judge Peterson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, it's complicated," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "We have reason to believe—" "Reason?" Marcus interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "Let's talk about reasons. Do you have surveillance footage showing my sister taking those headphones? Any witnesses who can corroborate your claim? Or are you basing this entire accusation on assumptions?" The judge hesitated, glancing at the manager for support. The manager, however, remained silent, clearly unwilling to step into the crossfire. Marcus seized the opportunity to press further. "I'll tell you what I think happened," he continued, pacing slowly across the room. "You saw a young black girl walking out of the store and assumed the worst. No evidence, no investigation, just prejudice dressed up as protocol." His words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Jasmine watched silently, her heart swelling with pride and relief. This was the Marcus she knew, the man who fought tirelessly for justice, even when the odds were stacked against him. Seeing him stand up for her in such a powerful way made her feel invincible, like maybe, just maybe, things would turn out okay after all. Judge Peterson struggled to respond. "Look, Mr. Thompson, I understand your concern, but these matters require careful consideration." "Careful consideration?" Marcus cut him off again, his patience wearing thin. "Careful consideration would involve actually looking at the facts instead of making snap judgments. Let me ask you this. Does my sister look like someone who steals? Does she act like it? Or is it easier to assume guilt because of the way she looks?" The question struck a nerve. Judge Peterson opened his mouth to reply but closed it again, unable to find the right words. The truth was written all over his face. He had indeed jumped to conclusions, influenced by biases he might not have even realized he held. Marcus leaned forward, resting both hands on the desk. "Now let's try this again," he said, his voice low but authoritative. "Show me the evidence against my sister. All of it. Right now." The demand sent a ripple through the room. The manager fumbled through papers, searching for something, anything, that could justify their accusations. But there was nothing. No security footage, no witness statements, no proof whatsoever. It became painfully clear that the entire case against Jasmine was built on flimsy assumptions and unchecked bias. Marcus straightened, his expression hardening. "So, let me get this straight," he said, addressing everyone in the room. "You detained my sister, humiliated her in front of strangers, and declared her guilty, all without a shred of evidence. Is that correct?" No one dared to answer. The guards shuffled uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Judge Peterson sank lower. In his chair, his earlier bravado completely gone. Marcus turned to Jasmine, offering her a small, encouraging smile. "It's over," he told her softly. "You're coming home." But Marcus wasn't finished yet. Turning back to Judge Peterson, he added, "This isn't just about my sister. This is about accountability. What happened here today is unacceptable, and it needs to be addressed. Trust me, we'll make sure it is." With that, Marcus escorted Jasmine out of the office, his arm protectively around her shoulders. As they walked through the mall, heads turned, whispers followed, but neither of them cared. They had survived the ordeal together, stronger than ever. Little did they know this was only the beginning. The fight for justice was far from over, but, thanks to Marcus, the wheels of change were already in motion. As Marcus and Jasmine stepped out of the mall, the weight of what had just happened began to settle in. The cool evening air was a stark contrast to the heated tension they had left behind in that cramped office. Jasmine clutched her shopping bag tightly, her knuckles white from the effort. Though she was relieved to be free, the sting of false accusation lingered like an open wound. She glanced up at Marcus, who walked beside her with measured steps, his jaw clenched and his eyes sharp with determination. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked softly, breaking the silence. His voice was calm now, but Jasmine could sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. She nodded, though tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But why did they do that? Why didn't they believe me?" Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. Placing both hands on her shoulders, he looked directly into her eyes. "Because they were wrong," he said firmly, "and not just wrong. They were reckless. What happened back there isn't about you or anything you did. It's about the biases people carry, the assumptions they make without even realizing it. But we're going to fix this, Jasmine. We're going to make sure no one else has to go through what you did today." Jasmine felt a lump rise in her throat. For years, she'd known that life wasn't always fair for people who looked like her. She'd heard stories, her mom's, Marcus's, even her own. But hearing those words from her brother made everything feel heavier. At the same time, his unwavering support gave her strength. If anyone could take on the system, it was Marcus. He'd spent his career fighting battles much bigger than this one, and she trusted him completely. Back home, Marcus wasted no time getting to work. He set up his laptop on the dining table, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he drafted emails and gathered documents. First, he wrote a formal complaint to the State Bar Association, demanding an investigation into Judge Peterson's conduct. In clear, concise language, he outlined the events of the day, emphasizing the lack of evidence and the blatant disregard for due process. "This isn't just negligence," he wrote. "It's discrimination masquerading as authority." Next, Marcus reached out to local journalists. He knew the power of public opinion and understood that shining a light on injustice often forced those in power to act. Within hours, reporters began calling him back, eager to hear the story of the young black girl falsely accused and the federal prosecutor brother who stepped in to defend her. Marcus agreed to interviews but insisted that Jasmine stay out of the spotlight for now. "This is your fight too," he told her gently, "but I want to protect you from any unnecessary stress." By morning, the story had exploded. News outlets across the region ran headlines about the incident, sparking outrage among readers. Social media lit up with hashtags like "Justice for Jasmine" and "End Racial Profiling." People shared their own experiences of being unfairly targeted because of their race, flooding comment sections with stories of pain and resilience. The small Georgia town, once sleepy and unremarkable, found itself at the center of a national conversation about systemic racism and accountability. At school, Jasmine noticed the change immediately. Classmates who had rarely spoken to her before approached her in the hallways, offering words of encouragement. Some teachers pulled her aside after class to express their support. Even strangers at the grocery store recognized her and shook her hand, thanking her for speaking out. While the attention was overwhelming, it also reminded Jasmine that she wasn't alone. There were countless others standing with her, united against injustice. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his crusade. He filed a civil rights lawsuit against the mall management and Judge Peterson, alleging racial profiling and abuse of power. The legal process would take time, but Marcus was relentless. He pored over case files late into the night, consulting colleagues and experts to build the strongest possible argument. "We're not just suing them for damages," he explained to Jasmine during one of their late-night talks. "We're sending a message that says enough is enough." The backlash against the mall and Judge Peterson was swift and severe. Customers boycotted the store where the incident occurred, leaving shelves dusty and registers empty. Online reviews flooded in, criticizing the establishment for its discriminatory practices. Mall management scrambled to issue a public apology, promising reforms to prevent similar incidents in the future. They fired the security guards involved and announced plans to implement mandatory diversity training for all employees. Yet these measures felt hollow to many. As one protester held a sign reading, "Apologies aren't enough," the sentiment resonated deeply. Judge Peterson, meanwhile, became a pariah. His reputation, once respected in legal circles, crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. Calls for his resignation grew louder, with petitions circulating online and community members organizing protests outside his home. Eventually, unable to withstand the pressure, Peterson stepped down from his position. In a brief statement, he claimed he had only been doing his duty but acknowledged that mistakes had been made. To Jasmine, his apology felt meaningless, a weak attempt to save face rather than a genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Through it all, Jasmine grappled with mixed emotions. On one hand, she was grateful for the outpouring of support and the tangible changes taking place. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. The incident had shaken her confidence, making her question whether she truly belonged in spaces where she was constantly judged by her appearance rather than her character. But Marcus refused to let her dwell on negativity. "You're stronger than this, Jasmine," he told her one evening, as they sat together on the porch. "What happened to you was wrong, yes, but look at how far you've come since then. You're inspiring people. You're showing them that they don't have to accept injustice lying down." Jasmine nodded slowly, absorbing his words. Over time, she began to see the situation differently, not as a personal failure, but as a catalyst for growth. She realized that while she couldn't control how others perceived her, she could control how she responded. And she chose to respond with courage and resilience. Inspired by Marcus's advocacy, Jasmine decided to pursue a career in law. She wanted to dedicate her life to fighting for justice, particularly for marginalized communities who often lacked a voice. Her dream of becoming a lawyer took on new meaning, fueled by her first-hand experience with systemic bias. Marcus, proud of her decision, promised to guide her every step of the way. "You'll be unstoppable," he told her with a grin. "Just wait and see." As weeks turned into months, the impact of Jasmine's ordeal rippled outward. Community leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss racial profiling and implicit bias, encouraging open dialogue and education. Local schools incorporated lessons on civil rights and equality into their curriculums, ensuring that future generations would grow up aware of the importance of fairness and respect. Slowly but surely, the town began to change, not perfectly, but progress was undeniable. For Jasmine, the journey was far from over. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities to stand up and speak out. But she faced them head-on, buoyed by the knowledge that she wasn't fighting alone. With Marcus by her side and a growing network of allies cheering her on, she embraced her role as a symbol of hope and resistance. Together, they proved that even in the face of adversity, courage and family could overcome injustice and inspire others to do the same. The ripple effects of Jasmine's ordeal continued to spread far beyond the confines of their small Georgia town. What had started as a single, unjust accusation in a mall office was now a movement, a rallying cry for communities across the country who were tired of systemic racism and unchecked bias. The story of a young black girl standing her ground and her federal prosecutor brother stepping in to demand accountability resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. It wasn't just about Jasmine anymore. It was about every person who had ever been judged unfairly, dismissed without reason, or made to feel invisible because of the color of their skin. Marcus became a central figure in this growing wave of activism. His reputation as a formidable advocate preceded him, but now he found himself thrust into the national spotlight, not just as Jasmine's protective older brother, but as a voice for change. Invitations poured in from universities, civil rights organizations, and even late-night talk shows, all eager to hear his perspective on racial profiling and justice reform. Marcus accepted some of these invitations, using each platform to amplify Jasmine's story and call for systemic change. Indo. One particularly impactful interview on a popular news program, Marcus sat across from the host, his posture relaxed yet commanding. The interviewer began by asking how he felt when he first heard what happened to Jasmine. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. Angry, he admitted, but not surprised. This kind of thing happens every day, people being treated as guilty until proven innocent simply because of the way they look. What sets this case apart is that my sister had someone willing to fight back. Most people don't have that luxury. The audience listened intently as Marcus went on to explain the broader implications of the incident. This isn't just about one bad decision by a judge or a couple of overzealous security guards. It's about systems that allow discrimination to thrive unchecked. It's about policies that fail to protect marginalized communities. And it's about the everyday battles that people like my sister face, often silently, because speaking up can feel impossible. His words struck a chord. Viewers flooded social media with messages of support, many sharing their own experiences of facing prejudice. One viewer tweeted, "Thank you, Marcus Thompson, for saying what so many of us have felt but couldn't put into words." Another wrote, "Jasmine's courage gives me hope. We're stronger together." Back home, Jasmine watched the interview with a mix of pride and awe. Seeing Marcus speak so passionately reminded her of why she admired him so much. But it also reinforced her determination to follow in his footsteps. She spent hours researching law programs, reading books on civil rights, and drafting essays for college applications. Her goal was clear. She wanted to become a lawyer who fought for those whose voices were silenced, just as Marcus had done for her. School became both a challenge and an opportunity for Jasmine. Some classmates still whispered behind her back, questioning whether she truly deserved the attention she was receiving. Others, however, rallied around her, offering encouragement and admiration. One teacher, Mrs. Carter, took a special interest in mentoring Jasmine. A former civil rights attorney herself, Mrs. Carter recognized the fire in Jasmine's eyes and saw immense potential in her. During lunch breaks, they would sit together in the library, discussing landmark cases and strategies for effecting change. "You remind me of myself at your age," Mrs. Carter once told Jasmine with a smile. "Passionate, driven, and unafraid to stand up for what's right. You're going to make waves, Jasmine. Just remember to stay grounded along the way." Grounded was exactly how Jasmine felt during those quiet moments with Mrs. Carter. Despite the whirlwind surrounding her, these conversations provided clarity and focus. They reminded her that while public recognition was gratifying, the real work lay ahead. In the courtroom, in policy-making rooms, and in communities where justice remained elusive. Meanwhile, Marcus kept pushing forward with the legal battle against the mall and Judge Peterson. The lawsuit gained traction, drawing attention from advocacy groups nationwide. Lawyers specializing in civil rights joined forces with Marcus, forming a coalition dedicated to holding institutions accountable for discriminatory practices. Together, they argued that the false accusation against Jasmine wasn't an isolated incident. It was symptomatic of larger issues within the system. During depositions, Marcus grilled witnesses relentlessly, exposing inconsistencies in their testimonies. He uncovered emails between mall management and security personnel that revealed troubling patterns of targeting shoppers based on race. These revelations shocked even seasoned attorneys, further fueling public outrage. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse daily, holding signs that read, "Bias has no place in justice," and "Stand with Jasmine." Judge Peterson, already ostracized by the community, faced mounting pressure to settle the case. Representatives from the mall attempted to negotiate behind closed doors, offering financial compensation in exchange for dropping the lawsuit. But Marcus refused to budge. "This isn't about money," he declared during a press conference. "It's about accountability. If we accept a settlement, we're letting them off the hook, and that's unacceptable." As the trial date approached, Jasmine found herself reflecting on the journey thus far. She thought about the humiliation she'd endured, the sleepless nights spent wondering if anyone would believe her, and the overwhelming relief of having Marcus by her side. Yet, through it all, she realized something profound. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been wrongfully accused, for every young black girl told she didn't belong, for every family torn apart by systemic injustice. One evening, as she and Marcus sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jasmine voiced this realization aloud. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think this whole thing was just about me. But now I see it differently. It's bigger than me, bigger than us. It's about showing people that they matter, that their voices matter." Marcus smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "That's exactly right," he replied. "And that's why you're going to be unstoppable, sis, because you understand what's at stake." The trial finally began on a crisp autumn morning. Courtrooms are often tense places, but this one buzzed with anticipation. Reporters packed the gallery, cameras clicking as lawyers shuffled papers and adjusted ties. Jasmine sat beside Marcus, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Though nervous, she felt a sense of purpose, a quiet confidence that came from knowing she was part of something greater than herself. Opening statements painted starkly contrasting pictures. The defense portrayed the incident as a simple misunderstanding, downplaying its significance. Marcus, however, delivered a powerful rebuttal, reminding the jury of the evidence and the humanity at the heart of the case. "This isn't about headphones," he said, his voice steady and firm. "It's about dignity. It's about fairness. It's about ensuring that no one else has to endure what my sister did simply because of the color of her skin." By the end of the first day, it was clear that the trial wouldn't be resolved quickly. Legal proceedings are rarely swift, especially in high-profile cases like this one. But Jasmine knew patience was key. Every witness cross-examined, every document scrutinized, brought her closer to justice, not just for herself, but for countless others waiting for their turn to be heard. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered daily, chanting slogans and holding vigils. Among them were activists, students, parents, and ordinary citizens united by a shared belief in equality and fairness. For Jasmine, seeing these crowds filled her with gratitude and resolve. She realized that while the road ahead might still be long, she wasn't walking it alone. Together they were building a future where accusations wouldn't be based on assumptions, and where justice truly meant justice for all. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became a battleground of truths and lies, emotions and evidence. Each day brought new revelations, some expected, others shocking. Marcus stood at the forefront, his presence commanding yet composed, as he meticulously dismantled the defense's arguments. With every question he posed to witnesses, every piece of evidence he presented, it became increasingly clear that this case was about far more than a stolen pair of headphones. It was a reckoning, a moment for society to confront the biases and prejudices embedded in its systems. One particularly pivotal moment came when Marcus called the store manager to the stand. The man looked nervous, fidgeting with his tie as he took the oath. Marcus approached him with calm authority, his questions deliberate and pointed. "Can you explain," Marcus began, "why my sister was singled out among dozens of customers that day? Was there any specific behavior or action on her part that raised suspicion?" The manager hesitated, glancing at his lawyer before responding. "Well, she matched the description," he stammered. "Description?" Marcus repeated, raising an eyebrow. "What description? You mean the fact that she's a young black girl? Because if that's your criteria for suspicion, then I'd say your store has a serious problem." The gallery erupted in murmurs, forcing the judge to bang his gavel for order. But Marcus wasn't finished. He pressed on, asking whether the manager had reviewed security footage before accusing Jasmine. When the answer was no, Marcus turned to the jury, his expression grave. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is what happens when assumptions replace investigation. This is how innocent people get hurt." The impact of Marcus's words rippled through the room. Even some members of the jury exchanged uneasy glances, visibly unsettled by the implications. For Jasmine, sitting quietly beside her brother, it was both empowering and heartbreaking. Empowering because she saw the truth being laid bare, Heartbreaking because she knew such truths were often ignored or dismissed. Outside the courthouse, the movement continued to grow. Supporters gathered, daily their numbers swelling as news of the trial spread. Local activists organized rallies, inviting speakers from across the country to share their stories of racial profiling and injustice. College students held teach-ins, discussing systemic racism and ways to combat it. Teachers incorporated lessons about the case into their classrooms, encouraging young minds to think critically about fairness and equality. What had started as one family's fight for justice had evolved into a nationwide call for change. Jasmine found herself at the center of this whirlwind. Though she preferred staying out of the spotlight, she couldn't ignore the weight of responsibility she felt. People looked to her not just as a victim of injustice, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. At first, the attention overwhelmed her. She struggled to reconcile the shy, studious girl she'd always been with the public figure she was becoming. But over time, she learned to embrace her role, not as someone seeking fame, but as someone determined to make a difference. One evening, after a long day in court, Jasmine attended a community meeting hosted by a local civil rights group. The room buzzed with energy as people shared their experiences and brainstormed solutions. When it was her turn to speak, Jasmine stepped up to the microphone, her hands trembling slightly. "I never thought something like this could happen to me," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "But it did. And while it was painful, it also taught me something important. Silence doesn't protect us. Speaking up does." Her words earned a standing ovation, tears streaming down faces as the crowd applauded. For many, Jasmine's courage was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, one person's voice could spark change. Inspired by the support she received, Jasmine decided to take her advocacy further. She started a blog, writing candidly about her experience and sharing resources for others facing similar challenges. She titled it, "Breaking the Bias," a nod to the systemic barriers she hoped to dismantle. Back in the courtroom, the final days of the trial arrived. Closing arguments were scheduled, and tensions ran high. Marcus spent hours preparing his statement, poring over notes and rehearsing key points. He wanted to ensure that his message resonated not only with the jury, but with everyone watching, both inside the courtroom and beyond. When the day came, Marcus rose to deliver his closing remarks. Dressed impeccably in his signature navy blue suit, he exuded confidence as he addressed the jury. "This case isn't complicated," he began, his tone measured but impassioned. "It's about facts versus assumptions, about accountability versus excuses." My sister, Jasmine Thompson, walked into that store as an ordinary customer. She left humiliated, accused of a crime she didn't commit, based on nothing more than the color of her skin. That is unacceptable. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "We've shown you the lack of evidence, the discriminatory practices, the blatant disregard for due process. We've proven that this wasn't just a mistake, it was a failure of the system. A system that allowed bias to dictate outcomes. And if we let it slide, what message are we sending? That it's okay to treat people unfairly as long as no one holds you accountable?" By the time Marcus finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the defense attorneys seemed shaken, knowing they had little ground to stand on. As the jury deliberated, Jasmine sat beside Marcus, holding his hand tightly. She didn't know what the verdict would be, but she felt a sense of peace. Win or lose, she had fought back. She had stood up for herself and inspired others to do the same. Finally, after hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. The foreman stood, his voice echoing through the tense silence. "On all counts," he announced, "we find in favor of the plaintiff." A wave of relief washed over Jasmine as cheers erupted in the courtroom. Marcus wrapped her in a tight hug, whispering, "You did it, sis, we did it." Outside, supporters erupted in celebration, chanting Jasmine's name and waving signs of victory. Reporters rushed to interview her, but Marcus stepped in to shield her from the chaos. "Let's give her space," he told them firmly. She's been through enough. In the days that followed, the ruling made headlines nationwide. Legal experts praised the outcome as a landmark decision, setting a precedent for holding institutions accountable for discriminatory practices. The mall issued another apology, this time accompanied by concrete changes, revamped security protocols, diversity training programs, and partnerships with civil rights organizations. Judge Peterson faded into obscurity, his career irreparably tarnished. For Jasmine, the victory was bittersweet. While she was grateful for the outcome, she knew the fight wasn't over. Racism and bias weren't confined to a single town or incident. They were pervasive issues requiring ongoing effort and vigilance. Determined to keep pushing forward, Jasmine threw herself into her studies, earning top marks and securing scholarships to prestigious universities. Her dream of becoming a civil rights lawyer felt closer than ever. Marcus, too, remained committed to the cause. He expanded his work, partnering with advocacy groups to push for policy reforms at the state and federal levels. Together, he and Jasmine traveled across the country, speaking at events and inspiring others to join the fight for justice. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, forged not just by blood but by a shared mission to create a better world. As Jasmine prepared to leave for college, she reflected on how much had changed since that fateful day at the mall. She thought about the pain, the fear, and the anger, but also the strength, the solidarity, and the hope. Most importantly, she thought about the countless lives touched by her story. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "We're going to keep breaking the bias one step at a time." And with that, Jasmine packed her bags, ready to embark on the next chapter of her journey. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she wasn't walking it alone. With Marcus by her side and a growing army of allies behind her, she was unstoppable. Together, they proved that even in the darkest moments, courage and determination could light the way toward justice and inspire others to follow. The months following the trial were transformative for Jasmine and Marcus, as well as for the community they had inspired. The victory in court was more than just a legal win. It was a testament to the power of resilience, unity, and unwavering belief in justice. For Jasmine, the experience became a cornerstone of her identity, shaping not only her career aspirations but also her understanding of what it meant to be a leader in the fight against systemic injustice. Jasmine's first semester at college marked the beginning of a new chapter. She enrolled in pre-law courses, eager to build the foundation she would need to become a lawyer. Her professors quickly recognized her passion and intellect, often pulling her aside after class to offer guidance or share opportunities for growth. One professor, Dr. Evelyn Carter, a civil rights scholar who had followed Jasmine's story closely, became a mentor to her. "You have a gift," Dr. Carter told Jasmine during one of their meetings. "Not just your intelligence, but your ability to connect with people. That's rare, especially in someone so young." Encouraged by Dr. Carter, Jasmine joined the university's debate team, where she honed her skills in public speaking and argumentation. Debating topics like criminal justice reform, education equity, and voting rights gave her a platform to articulate her beliefs and challenge others to think critically. Her teammates admired her dedication, often joking that arguing with Jasmine was like trying to outwit a seasoned attorney. Yet beneath the playful banter was genuine respect. They knew she was destined for greatness. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his work as a federal prosecutor, using his position to tackle cases involving corruption, discrimination, and abuse of power. He remained deeply involved in advocacy efforts, collaborating with organizations focused on dismantling systemic racism. His reputation as both a formidable lawyer and a compassionate advocate grew, earning him invitations to speak at conferences and lead workshops nationwide. But no matter how busy he got, Marcus always made time for Jasmine. Whether it was reviewing her essays, discussing landmark Supreme Court cases, or simply checking in to see how she was doing, he never missed an opportunity to support her. Their bond strengthened even further when Marcus invited Jasmine to shadow him during a high-profile case. The defendant was a police officer accused of using excessive force against a black teenager during a routine traffic stop. Sitting beside Marcus in the courtroom, Jasmine watched as he cross-examined witnesses, presented evidence, and delivered impassioned arguments. It was a masterclass in legal strategy, but it was also a lesson in empathy. Marcus didn't just seek convictions. He sought accountability and healing for those harmed by injustice. After the trial concluded, Marcus turned to Jasmine with a knowing smile. "What did you think?" he asked. "It was incredible," Jasmine replied, still processing everything she'd witnessed. "But it's overwhelming too. How do you stay so calm under pressure?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Years of practice," he admitted, "and remembering why I'm here. Every case is about more than winning or losing. It's about making things right, even if it's just a little bit at a time." Those words stayed with Jasmine long after they left the courthouse. They reminded her that while the path to justice might be challenging, it was also meaningful. Each step forward mattered, no matter how small it seemed. Back on campus, Jasmine threw herself into activism, organizing events and campaigns to raise awareness about racial profiling and inequality. She co-founded a student group called Voices for Change, which brought together students from diverse backgrounds to discuss social issues and brainstorm solutions. Under her leadership, the group hosted panel discussions, film screenings, and fundraisers for local nonprofits working toward racial equity. Their flagship event, a town hall featuring activists, academics, and survivors of police brutality, drew hundreds of attendees and sparked conversations that extended far beyond the university. Jasmine's efforts didn't go unnoticed. By her sophomore year, she was being recognized as a rising voice in the movement for racial justice. A national magazine featured her in an article titled "The Next Generation of Leaders," highlighting her courage and commitment to creating change. When the reporter asked what drove her, Jasmine's response was simple yet profound. "I want to live in a world where no one has to prove their worth based on the color of their skin, where everyone gets the benefit of the doubt. If my story can help make that happen, then everything I've been through will be worth it." As Jasmine's influence grew, so did the impact of her advocacy. Her blog, Breaking the Bias Drag, gained thousands of followers, becoming a trusted resource for information and inspiration. Readers shared their own stories in the comments section, creating a virtual community of support and solidarity. Inspired by this connection, Jasmine launched a podcast series interviewing experts, activists, and everyday people about their experiences with discrimination and resilience. Each episode ended with a call to action, urging listeners to educate themselves, engage in dialogue, and take steps toward meaningful change. Despite her growing fame, Jasmine remained grounded. She credited her success not to individual brilliance, but to collective effort. "I didn't get here alone," she often said. "My family, my mentors, my friends, they've all played a part, and so have the countless strangers who stood with me when I needed them most." By the time Jasmine graduated from college, she had already made significant strides in her mission to break the bias. She delivered the valedictorian speech at her commencement ceremony, addressing thousands of graduates, faculty members, and guests. Standing on stage in her cap and gown, she spoke with poise and conviction. "We are living in a time of great uncertainty," she began, "but also great possibility. We have the power to shape the future, to redefine what justice looks like, to challenge systems that fail us, and to lift each other up. Let's not waste that power." Her words earned a standing ovation, cementing her status as a leader among her peers. Later that evening, Marcus surprised her with a framed copy of her speech. "For the girl who once doubted whether anyone would believe her," he said, handing it to her with a proud smile. "Now look at you, changing the world, one word at a time." With her undergraduate degree in hand, Jasmine set her sights on law school. She applied to top programs across the country, confident that her unique perspective and unwavering determination would open doors. Acceptance letters poured in, each one affirming her potential to effect real change. In the end, she chose a prestigious university known for its commitment to civil rights and social justice. As she packed her belongings for the move, she felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. This was it, the next big step toward achieving her dream. Law school proved to be as demanding as Jasmine had anticipated, but she thrived in the rigorous environment. Her classmates respected her insights, often seeking her opinion during study groups and mock trials. Professors praised her analytical skills and creativity, encouraging her to pursue internships with organizations aligned with her values. Over the summers, Jasmine worked with public defenders, civil rights attorneys, and policy advocates, gaining hands-on experience that deepened her understanding of the legal system. Throughout it all, Marcus remained her rock. They spoke regularly, sharing updates and offering advice. On particularly tough days, Marcus reminded Jasmine of the strength she had shown during her ordeal at the mall. "You faced harder battles than this," he'd say, "and you came out stronger every time." By the time Jasmine graduated from law school, she was ready to take on the world. She passed the bar exam on her first attempt and secured a position at a renowned civil rights firm. Her first major case involved representing a group of tenants fighting discriminatory housing practices. Drawing on her own experiences, Jasmine approached the case with empathy and tenacity, securing a groundbreaking settlement that set new standards for fair housing policies. As her career flourished, Jasmine never forgot where she came from. She returned to her hometown frequently, mentoring young students and supporting local initiatives aimed at fostering equality. She collaborated with Marcus on several projects, combining their expertise to amplify their impact. Together, they published articles, led workshops, and advocated for legislative reforms that addressed systemic inequities. Looking back on her journey, Jasmine realized how much had changed since that fateful day at the mall. What had started as a moment of humiliation had transformed into a lifetime of purpose. She had faced adversity head-on, refusing to let it define her. Instead, she used it as fuel to drive her forward, inspiring countless others along the way. Interviews, speeches, and conversations, Jasmine often reflected on the lessons she had learned. "Justice isn't something you achieve overnight," she would say. "It's a process, a constant effort to listen, learn, and act. And it's not something you do alone. It takes courage, yes, but it also takes community. Because when we stand together, there's nothing we can't overcome." For Jasmine and Marcus, the fight for justice was far from over. But they faced it with hope, knowing that every battle won brought them closer to a fairer, more equitable world. Together, they proved that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, courage, family, and determination could create ripples of change that lasted a lifetime.